Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where we sit down with the people who give shape, texture, and voice to life on the North Fork of Long Island. Some are rooted here by generations, others arrived by chance or choice, but all carry with them a piece of the story. We talk about what's changing, what's worth holding on to, and the currents of history, both quiet and loud, that run through this place. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 240, we sit down with Mary Korpi, author of the Lady Lighthouse Keeper and a docent at Horton Point Lighthouse. Through her work welcoming visitors and sharing the history of one of North Fork's most recognizable landmarks, Mary developed a fascination with Stella Prince, the only woman to serve as Lighthouse Keeper at Horton Point. That research eventually became the Lady Lighthouse Keeper, a historical novel that has introduced readers to Stella's remarkable story and helped preserve an important chapter of local history. Mary's story is also a reminder that places like Horton Point Lighthouse are sustained not only by their history but by the dedicated volunteers who give their time to welcome visitors, share local stories, and preserve these landmarks for future generations. Their commitment keeps the lighthouse and the stories it holds alive. In our conversation, Mary reflects on her life and background, the path that eventually brought her to the North Fork, and how she became involved with Horton Point Lighthouse. We also discuss the inspiration behind her book, the research that brought Stella Prince's story to life, and why preserving local history continues to matter for future generations. So I hope you enjoy episode 240 with Mary Korpi. This episode was recorded June 29th, 2026. Thank you so much for coming on the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. I'm really looking forward to talking to you today.
Well, thank you for having me.
To start off in the beginning, can you tell me a little bit about your early life and where you grew up?
Sure. So I grew up in Elmont, the first town in Nassau County, a long way from here. And I'm a blue-collar girl. My dad was a construction worker, a tin knocker, and my mom was a homemaker. Very typical upbringing. 12 years of Catholic school, so I got a good education. I started off in Queens College for a couple of years and then transferred to Stony Brook, where I got my bachelor's in psych. And when I moved with my husband to St. Louis, I got my master's when my first son was born. We have 3 sons and 2 grandsons, and now a baby granddaughter. She'll be 1 in July. She'll be 1 July 4th.
Wow. And did you know coming out of high school or going into college what you wanted to go into?
I was a psychology major in college. I thought I wanted to do child psychology, but when I got into the master's program, I went into administration. I had worked a number of nonprofit jobs along the way and experienced a lot of not great management and decided I wanted to do this better. Mm-hmm. So I did an administrative master's, and that has served me well throughout my career, I think.
Mm-hmm. And you've also spent over 40 years in special education and counseling. What motivated you to pursue this career?
Well, I started as a volunteer at Camp Anchor. Camp Anchor is a program that's run by the town of Hempstead, still there. It's located at Lido Beach in the summer. And a group of my friends and I started volunteering there at 14. I did get my best hands-on training on working with people with special needs there. My first one-to-one was a boy named Brucey, who I now know was on the spectrum. I didn't have that language then, but I learned how to handle seizures and how to deal with people who had special needs there. And then at Stony Brook, with my bachelor's in psych, I found more and more I was drawn to that population. I was a group home parent, one of the first group homes in Nassau County while I was still in college. I was a group home parent, younger than any of the people who lived in my home. The way things were done back then. But so I always have been drawn to people with special needs, particularly primary developmental disabilities has been my primary area of focus. I did work at Helen Keller for a while with folks who are deafblind and developmentally disabled, a special program that they ran. So I've had a lot of experience, AHRC before that. the Shield Institute before that. I mean, it's a lot of years. And then
Yes.
my last 22 years, I was at Nassau BOCES and had the job title of Vocational Rehabilitation Counselor.
Okay.
And that meant I did the transition for our students and with their parents as they transitioned from school to adult services. That
Yes.
was my focus.
Okay. And over this time, when did you get interested in history? Was that something that was
Yeah, I'm not
early?
sure I was particularly interested in history. I wonder if as you get older, you don't get you maybe are drawn more to what happened in the past. I do wonder about that, and I think living out here,
Hmm.
I think the North Fork has a unique appreciation for the local history of this area, and I've certainly been drawn to it since I'm out here. I don't remember particularly being drawn to history growing up. I was very interested in writing growing up, and I was an editor of the newspaper and all that stuff in school.
Hmm.
I always wrote, but
Yes.
not a book, but anyway, yeah.
But with your background in counseling, has that influenced your perspective on storytelling or working with
Yeah,
the
I'm
community?
sure it has. I mean, in writing the Lady Lighthouse Keeper, Stella Prince, I definitely draw her as a character who is classic COA, child of an alcoholic, which
Mm.
she was. She's overly responsible. She takes on adult roles at a very young age. And, that kind of thing comes easily to me because that was so much of my background and training. So,
Mm.
that's the way I look at things.
Yes. And you mentioned the North Fork and coming out here, but I guess when was the first time you had visited the North Fork?
I don't know the first time I visited. My husband had a boat out here before we lived out here. My husband had his boat at in Jamesport. He kept it. We lived in Syosset. We raised our sons in
Mhm.
Syosset, so that's just Nassau County, the edge of Nassau County. But we enjoyed being out here. We were out here a lot, obviously, and then eventually we bought a summer house out here. It's a pretty typical North Fork story. We bought a summer house. I actually rented that house out. I love the hospitality business. I learned a lot from renting the house out. But more and more, we wanted to use the house. We were in the house
Mhm.
more than anybody else. So then when I retired, which was June of 2017, I was on a mission to get involved and meet people out here, make new friends. I had friends in Nassau, but I wanted friends closer to home. And that's what brought me to the lighthouse. I saw an ad in the paper and I thought, oh, lighthouses. I like lighthouses. Let's see what that's about. And I went and they said, okay, yeah, you can volunteer. Okay.
You mentioned your husband having a boat out here, but was there anything else that, like your initial thoughts on the area and what you enjoyed about it?
Well, I appreciate the fact that it's comparative to Syosset and Elmont, where I grew up,
Hmm.
agrarian. There are farms here. That there's a slower pace. I've never lived anywhere before that's such a small town,
Hmm.
and here, and some of that's because I volunteer at the lighthouse and because of the book and all the talks. I almost don't go anywhere that I don't know people here. That didn't happen in Syosset, in PTA and all that. You got to know your cohort kind of thing.
Yes.
And work. I knew a lot of people because I worked in a school. You get to know a lot of people.
Hmm.
But out here it's different. It really is. People recognize me. It's a little weird actually to me. But it's nice. It's never been unpleasant. It's just surprising when someone says,
Hmm.
"Oh, I know you. How do I know you?" The book.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you mentioned in 2017 was when you started to get involved with the Horton Point Lighthouse and South Hole Historical Museum.
Correct. So
Uh,
so I retired in June of 2017. By August of 2017, I was a volunteer at the lighthouse. I've been doing it ever since then. I'm a trustee on the board of Southold Historical now. I've on a variety of committees. I'm on the Education for Youth committee, and I also volunteer at the Candlelight Tour where I'm in the Samuel Moore House. So I just really enjoy sharing history with people, and
mhm.
you know there is some reading of people when they come into the lighthouse. Some people, I always say, you got a couple, he knows everything, just let them go.
Mhm.
Never
Yes.
never correct anything. But and the wedding people, we get a lot of wedding people who are just looking to kill a little time, or the wedding was yesterday and they're kind of hungover, so they just kind of want to be left alone. And that's
Yes.
cool. And we have everything. There's sign-ups, but we ask people, would you like to know a little bit more?
Mhm.
And then we can do really guided tours. I mean, today I did a private tour. We do private tours when we're not open. This was a group of 4 women from Rocky Point area, They had seen me speak at a tea. They had read my book, and they wanted a more in-depth understanding of Stella and where she lived and where she worked. And so that's why people would come out for a private tour. That's one of the reasons people come for private tours. Yeah.
And over that time, how did you first learn about Stella Prince and getting inspired to write the Lady Lighthouse Keeper book?
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because when I started at the lighthouse, we didn't really know much about her, and we have a whole little orientation that we give people, and there's a printed script for greeting people, so we give people a little something to start with. You can take it your own direction, but we want to give people a little information. But there was this book, Horton Point Lighthouse, a Nautical Museum, by Don Bales. That is one of the books that I read, and this talks about the entire history of the lighthouse. And in this book, there's one paragraph about Stella Prince, and I was like, well, that's interesting. There was a woman here. I've never heard that before. So I started asking people. No one had heard about her. And so I started reading books about women lighthouse keepers. There are many books. Women Who Kept the Light, Keep the Light Burning, Katie, The Lighthouse Keeper's Wife, The Lighthouse Keeper's Daughter. On and I have a whole shelf of them now. And but Stella is not mentioned in anything. In fact, she was not even included on the official list of women lighthouse keepers that the Coast Guard is responsible for. And so I then had to go to origin sources. Fortunate out here that our Southold Historical historian Amy Folk was able to assist me, as well as the Suffolk County Museum. Wendy Annabelle at Suffolk County Museum helped me find. And in Stella's case, it was very fortunate because she is a direct descendant of Captain John Prince, who was a whaler who located to Southold in the 1700s. So her family is something of a family of note, being the descendant of a whaling captain's family. And one of her, she is a descendant of Helen Wright Prince. Helen Prince was a school teacher locally. She's a woman, a very impressive woman on her own, in that she taught at migrant camps. She taught children at migrant camps.
Yes.
So she really was an outstanding individual. And she collected all the Prince family history and had it all brought to, when she died, her sons donated it to Suffolk Historical Museum in Riverhead. So I was able to go there and read the actual journals. People kept journals back in the day. Now, I never found a journal that Stella wrote, but I did get to read the journal from her time period that her uncle Henry wrote and her cousin Edith. I kind of focused on those two characters, and they became characters in the book then. Okay. But they told me a lot about the local history and what it was like to live on the North Fork at that time.
Yes. And just going through a lot of this material, were there any surprising discoveries?
I think that the fact that there was a woman who did this, what was typically a man's role in those days, was pretty unusual. And one of the things that helped the storyline for Stella is that she has a sister, Lucy, who's just 17 months younger than her. So Lucy followed a traditional path for women of her day. She married at 18. She had 4 children by the time she was 28. She was widowed at 33, and she died at 44. Wow. So she had this brief but very typical life. Stella, on the other hand, didn't marry till she was 37. She worked at the lighthouse as a single person all those years. And Stella actually lived at the lighthouse longer than anyone ever has to this day. She went when she was 3 years old, and with her dad was the keeper at that time. And she stayed on when her father was fired for cause. She stayed on as a volunteer with the next keeper, Captain Ebbets. When he took a fall, she finally became the keeper of the house. Of the lighthouse. She finally was commended by then President Theodore Roosevelt. And then she was paid for the next year and a half. She resigned when she married in October of 1904 because women were not allowed to work for the federal government in 1904. So she had to resign. I suspect she was intending to anyway, but that's just an interesting point. So it's a different world.
Yes. But how many years was she?
She lived at the lighthouse from when she was 3 till when she was 37.
Okay.
So longer than anyone else ever had. 34 years of her life at the lighthouse, and she died at 60. So most of her life was at that lighthouse.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you mentioned she wasn't in or recognized in a lot of these other books.
She wasn't recognized. There was nothing
There
published about her. There were newspaper articles that I found and little clips in the local newspapers about her making the honor roll as a student or about her taking a trip to visit cousins on Block Island. I mean, just little clips of things because she was, something of a sort of a gossip column kind of thing. And she was something of a locally famous woman. But nothing about her appeared in print until I was able to write the book. She, as I said, she had been overlooked by the Coast Guard even, and there were many other women, I'm sure. While they state about 300 women who served as lighthouse keepers during those years, from the 1700s. And usually they are the wife or the daughter of the keeper. He either goes to war, which is the first one that's noted. He went to fight in the Revolutionary War, and she manned the lighthouse. Everybody at a lighthouse works. Everybody at a lighthouse has jobs, even the children. There's no, childhood was different then anyway. Children didn't play all day. So, yeah. But Stella was cited repeatedly in different newspaper articles that I saw as taking on a yeoman's job at a very young age. In fact, when she left school, which I believe was around the age of 12, at that point it was the Lighthouse Service, the federal entity that oversaw lighthouses. They they let go of the assistant keeper. So Stella and her sister were now there, so they didn't need, and they raised her father's salary $50 a year and got rid of the assistant. So now these two girls are here and they can do the job. He doesn't need an assistant anymore. So, I think that was very telling.
Yes. And Stella Prince came to be officially recognized by the U.S. Coast Guard. That came
after I finished writing the book.
Yes.
I contacted the Coast Guard and I was eventually directed to a historian in Washington, D.C. And I said, I have all this information. I sent him the newspaper articles and he said, well, we can't accept newspaper articles. We need her documentary proof, basically her pay stubs. I'm like, okay, you're the Coast Guard. Where are they? He said, we weren't in charge of lighthouses in 1904. You have to track them down through the National Archives. So I started, this is right after COVID, right after lockdown. So I started contacting the National Archives in St. Louis. Snail mail, email, phone call. I was told, this is not an emergency. We'll get to you when we get to you. So by the fall, I was frustrated. I contacted the historian again in Washington and I said, I'm not getting anywhere. And he said, have your local librarian contact the National Archives in New York City. So I did that. Jerry Matlovic at Mattituck Laurel Library, who had been very helpful with research, the obituaries that I have that helped me write the book. So he was very excited. He got right on it. The next day, we got a response from an archivist in New York City saying, I think I have what you want. Just give me some more information. We did that. And sure enough, within 2 weeks, I had this little sheet of paper with check marks for quarters. And that was proof that Stella, in fact, was paid by the federal government. And I sent that off to the historian in Washington. Unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe ultimately, she didn't get right on the list. He seemed to have a hard time getting her on. It's a spreadsheet. I don't know why the Coast Guard couldn't figure out how to get her on a spreadsheet. By November, I believe, she was finally on the spreadsheet, but she was sharing a box alphabetically with the woman who alphabetically was above her. She didn't and I said to him, Mr. Mullen, she has waited 120 years for this. Could she please have her own box? So It took another 2 months, but he finally got her own box. And that was really a very positive thing because that was February of 2023, sorry. And so the Historical Society sent out a media blast, as they do, to all the local media, including Newsday. I also contacted Newsday. I had contacted them about the book earlier. And I immediately got a response from Newsday saying, I think we could use this for a Women's History Month story. I'm gonna be in touch with you tomorrow. And sure enough, they assigned Bill Blyer, who's a well-known author, writer, Pulitzer Prize winner. They assigned him to the story. They assigned a Newsday photographer to me. He spent an entire day getting pictures taken. And Stella got an 8-page spread in Newsday. Wow. I know, in Sunday's Newsday. Amazing. It was amazing. So, yes, I've had other self-published authors say, how did you do that? I'm like, luck. It just worked. And a lot of things with this book just kind of worked. It fell together.
Yes. And you've continued to tell people about this story, giving talks at the lighthouse or at local libraries and historical societies. How has that experience been?
Well, I'm very lucky. I'll say now, because I'm probably not writing another book, I'm probably a better speaker than I am a writer. And so, although people do enjoy the book, but it's easier for me to be a speaker. I worked for a time at the Helen Keller National Center in Sands Point, and I was the head of a department, and part of our work was training people who came from all over the world to learn about deafblindness. So because of that, they hired a professor from Hofstra to give us weekly lessons in public speaking. And so I was the beneficiary of this training while I was employed there. And then I went on to use it. Actually, The Lady Lighthouse Keeper is my second book. My first book I wrote when I was employed at Nassau BOCES, and it's a book about transitioning your child to adult services. And that it's out of date now, but it was at that time. And then at that time I would speak at special ed PTAs and, bring that information to families. I also, once they saw I had this ability, I was then speaking 2 to 4 times a year within my school, updating family, at family meetings, and that became part of my job to be a public speaker for that school.
Yes.
So I got to use it a lot, and now I use it really a lot. Usually, the way it goes, I mean, initially I went to all the libraries with the book, and I said, "Here's my book, and what do you think?" And they say, "Okay, well, yeah, we'll have you come and do a little talk." Now I actually get paid to do these talks. It's amazing, and usually people have heard me speak, and then they invite me to something else that they're a part of.
Okay.
So, big ones, the Hallockville tea that I did was a very big one. And because of that, I got three more gigs. The Port Jefferson an annual meeting, like the organizations, retiree organizations, they have annual meetings or monthly meetings, and they're looking for a speaker, and they'll invite me to come. I've done the Paris Squadron. I've done, all kinds of places. Very fun. You meet all kinds of interesting people. That's the part I like best. That's what I liked about the research best, is that I could talk to people and learn from them. And everybody always here would have, I'd make people here that I didn't know. And then they'd say, have you spoken to so-and-so? And I'd be like, oh no, who's that? And then I'd go and meet the next person, and they'd have some more other information. And it just built on itself like that.
Yes.
I didn't set out to write this book. I was really just gathering information about Stella to share at the lighthouse.
Yes.
So, but eventually, by time lockdown came, I had 2 trifolds of bits of her life, and I was like, I'm gonna have to write a book. I mean, this is too much information. I can't just tell people this.
Yes.
So that's how it happened.
And even today, has Stella Prince's story continued to evolve or have an impact beyond your book?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt. Yeah, it has. And last summer, a woman who is she is a descendant of Stella's, but she's in the process of cleaning out the last person who had some of the Prince family effects locally. She's the woman's in Orient, because Stella and her husband lived in Orient after she married. So this woman had reached out to me. She had read the book, and she was donating things. So she donated, for example, Stella's it was originally a 96-piece china that she had at her Orient when she married. She got that, and that was her china in Orient. Now, the funny story that she shared with me is that Stella predeceased her husband, and the neighbor across the street, who this woman's actually related to, would bring over dinner for him. Stella had been sick a long time, and so she started bringing George dinner. And he would heat the dinner up on the wood stove on the china dinner plates. So when he died and he left them the house and all its effects, they went in and they found all the dinner plates were blistered and burnt from him heating up his dinner on them. So there's no dinner plates left. There's lunch plates and all kinds of other paraphernalia. We don't even know what it's for, some of it, but yeah, he had ruined all the dinner plates. But so it's a lot of stories. I mean, the other thing in the book, I have Stella's sister's husband, Eddie Scott, as one of the really nice guys. There's not a lot of nice men in this book, because her father's really a bit of a difficult human being. Yes. But her uncle or cousin, really, Henry Prince and Eddie Scott are 2 really nice guys in the book. Well, it turns out Eddie Scott in real life wasn't a nice guy. I didn't dig into his background. Oh. He was a raging alcoholic who became violent when he drank, was jailed many times and died in the poorhouse in Yaphank. Was buried in whatever that you call the grave that's there. I didn't know any of that. And when the woman met me, she said, "Boy, you really did a nice job with Eddie Scott. Like, I'm surprised you didn't." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I didn't know anything about Eddie Scott." So yeah, I kind of modeled Eddie Scott on a friend's husband who's Irish. So I just kind of used that.
No, but it seems like you said a lot of men at that time had a lot of drinking problems.
Well, a lot of lighthouse keepers have drinking problems because it is an isolating job. Now, Horton Point Lighthouse is a plum assignment, and having been in the Civil War, you get points just like civil service. Now they would have gotten extra points to get that job, and being a local, and someone, other people speaking for you. That's all part of getting that job. But it's literally 2 miles from the center of Southold to Horton Point Lighthouse. So when Stella first moved there, they had to go through fields of cows and whatever. Had to open the gate, close, get off, pull the wagon through, go back, and continue on. So it was a bit of an arduous 2 miles.
Yes.
By time she was, I believe, about 14, they put a road in. So one of the assistant lighthouse keeper's wife had a baby there without any assistance, and that finally got the town to say, "I guess we really do need a road here," and they did it.
Yes.
But yeah.
No, that's interesting. Comparing even the lighthouses from ones further east or out on the water.
Right. Some of the lighthouses on the water are stag lighthouses. There would not be a family there.
Okay.
So like Plum Island, not Plum Island, that would have been a family, but the
was it Little
the Race Rock Lighthouse. That was a stag lighthouse.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was also curious, you mentioned that this is your second book. Are you thinking about writing another book, or any other stories that might interest you?
Yeah, I do get asked that a lot, which is nice to be asked. At this time, I don't intend to write another book. I mean, I don't know that this book would have gotten written if it wasn't for lockdown, when I had to be home and I had all that research sitting there, and it was like, I guess I should start writing.
Yeah.
I don't really love the process of writing. It's a lot of sitting in a chair and a lot of by yourself, and I'm more of a people person. I prefer to interact directly with people. So, it's not really my thing. But I'm not saying I wouldn't. I do have another novel, kind of in the hopper, like most authors do have several. And I was attending a writer's group all through writing Stella. I attended a writer's group every other week, and they read every chapter as I read all of what they're writing. And then we would critique each other's work. And it's very helpful. And I recommend that to anybody who wants to write, to get in a group where you can trust each other and build that kind of community. One of the fortunate things about that writers group is it was started by Parnell Wickham from Wickham Farm.
Yes.
And Parnell's a brilliant woman, a bit older than I am. And she, during lockdown, so we were all on Zoom by that because of lockdown. So she would call me every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, and she would critique and bring in more of North Fork life, because she grew up out here and on a farm, and I'm a suburban girl. What do I know? And so she would say, like, I had them slaughtering chickens, and she said, "You don't slaughter a chicken, you cut off its neck."
Okay.
I mean, or wring its neck. So little
Just
things like
different
little
wording.
Yes, little details of things that I wouldn't know, but that helps make the book more authentic for people. Yeah. I had someone in the group this morning ask about, they were amazed that it took her 2 days to travel from Greenport to Huntington on a boat. She did this trip. And I said, I really authenticated that with a number of people who didn't know each other. And I put out this email to a bunch of different people who are sailors, have family history of whaling in their family. And I got the exact same answer from all the 3 different people, said 2 days. So I was like, okay, 2 nights, that's it. Because I wouldn't know, but I did have to tell her that I made up the whole Huntington trip. That really wasn't real. So the book is based on the history of Stella. She did travel and she did stay different places. I don't know that she ever went to Huntington.
Yes. No, but that's kind of, you have to, when writing a book like that, it can't all be in terms of the storytelling.
Right. It is nonfiction. Yeah. It is fiction, rather. It is fiction. Yes, it's not nonfiction. It's fiction. And so, yes, it's historically based, and most of what happens in that book is real. But how people felt about it, I made up. one of my friends said to me, who had suffered through the whole writing process with me, but had not read it until it came out. She didn't want to. And when she read it, she said, I thought she'd be miserable, like, because she heard all my complaining, I guess. But, because she was forced to do this hard life. And I make her very excited about the life. From the first time she sees the lighthouse, she's excited to be there as a little 3-year-old. And I said, I didn't want a grouchy old woman living in my head for 4 years, like I wanted her to be a happy person. So she is.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know how writers write nasty people and stuff. I don't like that.
I was actually curious, when you were doing your research and getting ready to write the book, did you look at some other books that had been written about other women lighthouse keepers to see what people described them and their attitude? And
Absolutely, yes, because I wasn't able to find anything that Stella wrote at that
there was
point.
no journal or any.
Yeah, I didn't find her. We never found her journals. We haven't yet found. I'm still hoping.
Yes.
But so I read every single book, I think, pretty much, and still read pretty much every single book that comes out on women lighthouse keepers specifically. I've visited over 60 lighthouses.
Wow.
Every lighthouse has their own unique personality, based primarily on the volunteers who staff it. And I love it. I was just in Rhode Island this week visiting a lighthouse, offshore lighthouse. That was lovely. So yeah, it's really, I think, I was talking to someone this morning, I think that a lot of Stella is based probably on Ida Lewis. Ida Lewis is arguably the most famous woman lighthouse keeper in America. And she did a number of saves. I believe she saved a group of adolescents who were wealthy, Newport, Rhode Island. And because of that, she became very famous, much to her chagrin. There was a candy bar wrapper of her. Her face was all over. The president at the time came and visited her. She was given a mahogany boat from the government. She was very, very famous. She didn't like being famous, and that's kind of the personality that I drew. Many lighthouse keepers are not people. They're technical people. They want to do the work that they have to do, keep that light lit, keep everything's clean. Lighthouses were visited twice a year and by inspectors, government inspectors, and everything had to be ship shape. This is a military operation. So there's no toys on the floor, there's no dishes in the sink, there's no unmade beds. You have to clean up everything as you use it. No rags left in the tower. You get the keeper gets demerits, and that would affect his raises, or even potentially his job if it was too far gone. Wow. So yeah, it's whole family's there, but the family's not living they're living on someone else's on the government's dole. Yes. They get food a couple of times a year delivered. They have to do a lot of the basic maintenance, any high-end maintenance like masonry that the government would send specialists for. They paint the cistern. Most lighthouses got their water from a cistern because you can't get water naturally when you're on a rock somewhere, or even there, even at Horton Point. So they had a cistern that would collect the rainwater. Unfortunately, they paint the cistern twice a year with lead-based paint. So you got to wonder, why they didn't live very long, and there was a lot of mental illness there, and yes, wow. Things we know now that they didn't know then. Yes, yeah, I theorize that Stella and her sister died young. They grew up in a house with kerosene burning all the time. It's a known carcinogen. So
yes,
yeah.
No, that's really interesting. And I wanted to switch a bit to just the North Fork in general, and moving out here and just seeing how the North Fork has changed. What are your hopes for the future of the North Fork, whether it's preserving its history or fostering a vibrant community going forward?
I had a friend who lives in Virginia and came and visited recently, and she said, does everybody love this place as much as you do? I mean, I'm very happy here. Yeah. I feel very fortunate to be able to retire here. I know that everyone couldn't do that, and I feel very lucky that my husband and I can afford to live here because it's not inexpensive. But I do really appreciate the small town feeling in the respect for the history, and we're seeing that very, very much now during the 250th birthday of America. Of course, yes. This is highlighted everywhere. I attended the colonial wedding last week that Cutchogue Historical had. It was fabulous. They did a great job. So I love all these events, and I love attending all of this. Also, I think the fact that we've gotten the tax levies passed. So Suffolk, Southold Historical just got their tax levy passed. Manitouk Laurel, which is my district, had it passed last year.
Okay.
So locals are saying, yes, this is important to us, and we want to make sure. With that tax levy base, it gives us a solid base, because I'm on the board, gives us a solid base of income to know we're going to have this, and yes, we can go ahead. All of the historical societies are very dependent on grants and receiving grant. And we have a wonderful grant writer at Southold. And the Gardner Foundation is particularly helpful to this historical societies on the North Fork, to my knowledge. And they've funded wonderful, wonderful projects that people have been able to do. So I really think it's important to keep that going and to pass that on. I am on the Education for Youth Committee. We have the 4th and 6th grade come to the Lighthouse on different days in the spring, and the kids love it. Every grade, they go to a different location and learn and do a hands-on craft activity and learn about that location from kindergarten right through 6th grade. And so by the time I see them in 6th grade, I ask them, so what'd you do in kindergarten? And, what'd you do in 1st grade? And where'd you go? And, in 5th grade, they do the rubbings on the old cemetery.
Oh, yes.
So, there's just some amazing activity for each grade level. And I think it's wonderful that we pass it on to the kids. We definitely had a student this year, a young woman, who I said, we need you to volunteer, kid. You're good. She knew a lot already, which is terrific. So we want to encourage that,
No, definitely. I think just getting children and young adults interested in history, but more on a local level so that they understand what was happening here, I think is important.
Absolutely. Yes. It definitely grounds them. And I know it's hard for young adults to live here. I mean, two of my own sons don't live on Long Island anymore because they couldn't afford to, but I understand that. But, hopefully we can change that in the future too. I'd love to see more affordable housing.
Yes.
Not to get political, but I really would. That's a really important thing to me, to see affordable housing, workforce housing,
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely really important something things.
Yes.
That people have touched on. That's really important.
Yes. Absolutely.
And let me see. I think we covered everything.
Great.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today and share your story as well as Stella's story as well. It's really important part of history that I don't think gets discussed as much. So thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 240 with Mary Korpi. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.